starting now.
Camera speeds.
You know, if you want to take a picture during my question, that's fine. Just
Yeah,
not
because,
during-
right, they're
just not
gonna
during the
delete
answer.
his,
Yeah,
they're-
no.
cut
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah, my
while
questions
we're
are going to be
talking.
cut out.
Right.
So,
Right in front of them. Yep.
is this good here?
Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So, tell me, Alyza, tell me about the Kosher Kitchen and how you came to know about it.
Well, as a 12-year-old is what I really remember. I remember that we would go from time to time to the Kosher Kitchen. I remember that's where I learned what tabbouleh was. I've enjoyed it ever since. My kids now love tabbouleh, but I was introduced to it at the Kosher Kitchen. And Dave Schneer, who was my guitar teacher at the time, in addition to our having my Bat Mitzvah at the Kosher Kitchen, actually arranged, he taught me how to play guitar, and he arranged at least once, it may have even been twice, that I was able to play at the Kosher Kitchen in the evening, kind of as their background entertainment, so that made me feel very grown up. But it was a very just warm and friendly and comfortable environment, even for a child.
And Nat, tell me, how did you hear about Kosher Kitchen?
Well, as kosher consumers in Washington, obviously we were interested in any kosher restaurant or any facility that would be serving kosher food. Exactly when I first heard about the Kosher Kitchen, I guess it must have been very soon after it began, because as people who also grew up in New York where there were kosher restaurants, we were looking for places in Washington where we would be able to go for a meal outside. And since we would not eat in a non-kosher facility, the fact that the Kosher Kitchen had opened was a reason for us to go there, and we went there frequently. We loved the fact that we were able to go out. Both Ricky and I and our daughters were able to go out and maybe go with other friends as well. It was a terrific location.
So you've gone to kosher restaurants. Why's your shadow back? No, you're casting a shadow on Nat. With
Oh,
the-
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it was okay for
Yeah.
last dance. Yeah. So you were experienced with kosher restaurants. You'd gone to kosher restaurants in New York. How did the Kosher Kitchen measure up with the New York kosher restaurants?
Well, the New York kosher restaurants, many of them were much more formal. I mean, Lou Siegel's, for example, was the name kosher restaurant in New York. That was more formal than the Kosher Kitchen. The nice thing about the Kosher Kitchen was that it was a sort of gregarious, open, friendly place, not necessarily with all the fancy trimmings that a Lou Siegel's would have in New York, or any of the other, the Bernsteins on Essex Street or some of the others, but it was just much more comfortable and much more friendly. So we enjoyed it.
That's great. Are you picking up any of that electronic noise from the camera? From the background?
I might have heard one little beep way in the
Yeah,
background.
I'm
Okay.
trying to turn off, I'm gonna go turn on the sound, yeah.
Okay. All right. So you both were familiar with Kosher Kitchen. Prior, I want to prior Bat Mitzvah and the Bat Mitzvah. So, what kind of things attracted you to the kitchen? What did you like about it?
I liked the warmth. I liked the fact that we could go out, obviously, that we could eat. There was no other kosher restaurant in Washington, so it really was the only place we could go out to eat. So it was a happy place to be.
I understand that it was very expensive to eat there. Is that true?
I wasn't the one paying the bill, so you'll really have to ask him about that.
Now, how expensive was it at the Kosher Kitchen?
I tell you the truth, I can't remember, but I think it was certainly more reasonable than the restaurants in New York, and very comfortable. So that made it desirable, really.
When you went there, and this is a question for both of you, whoever wants to answer. Well, I'll ask Alyza first. When you went there, did you ever meet people at the Kosher Kitchen that otherwise you probably never would have met? And if so, maybe you could tell me about that.
I undoubtedly did,
I'm sorry,
but I can't say to you. I mean, I don't know if you're asking me, You know, it's not like, because we came, we ate there, right? I have the people who helped run the kitchen during the Bat Mitzvah. Were they friends that I ended up, from the Kosher Kitchen, creating a friendship with? No, it's not like Ira reached out to me. I didn't keep in touch with Ira over all the years. It's as I'm not the right, as a 12-year-old, I was not somebody who was meeting people at the community table or making friends or making, it was somebody who I would come as a kid with my parents to the restaurant.
So
Right.
let me
So
rephrase
that's-
the question
yeah.
then. So Nat, when you took your family to eat at the Kosher Kitchen, were you ever introduced to, or did you ever meet, or because different kinds of people came there, and I was just wondering if you ever met anyone there that you might not have met otherwise.
I'm sure I did, but it's been such a long time ago that I can't really tell you that there's any particular person who I met there. Dave Schneier we knew from before, really, and I'm sure that there were other people whom we met there. It was a place where people who were kosher went to go out, really, in Washington. So I'm sure we met people who were kosher and who came there because of the kosher facility, and then we would have met them there. But I can't tell you any particular person whom I met there.
All right, fair enough. So most people, when they're planning a bat mitzvah, would think, well, maybe I'll have it at this temple, or perhaps that temple, or I belong to this congregation or that congregation. Now it's not that unusual to have a bat mitzvah at a restaurant if you wanted to. But back then, how did you come to this decision? I mean, whose idea was it? It was your idea? Because I wasn't expecting that.
You weren't expecting that. You
The
thought
whole Bat
she had
Mitzvah
decided.
was his idea.
You have to realize, back then, you're wrong if you assume that back then a bat mitzvah was celebrated at a synagogue. There were very few, certainly almost no Orthodox synagogues that had any bat mitzvah celebrations. Bat mitzvah was a new concept back at the time that Alyza became a bat mitzvah. When a girl got to the age of 12, which under Jewish law made her responsible for her own acts and was the equivalent of a bar mitzvah, maybe they would take her out to a movie or something, or have a birthday party, which they would say is a bat mitzvah as well at home or someplace. But there was back at that time, there was certainly not in the Orthodox community, there was no such thing as a bat mitzvah celebration. And I since we only had daughters, no sons, 2 daughters, I just thought, look, I want to have a celebration for my daughters and for Alyza being the older one when she gets to be bat mitzvah. So what can be done? A bar mitzvah boy in the Orthodox tradition reads a section of the Torah for that Shabbat when he's bar mitzvah, and they have a party afterwards in the evening or a big kiddush in the shul. And I thought to myself, what is the equivalent that I can do for Alyza? And since I myself liked to read the book of Esther, Megillat Esther, I've been doing that ever since I was young, and my father had me read it at home for my mother, and then I would read it in the synagogue. So since I liked to do that, Alyza's birthday was shortly before Purim, I said, hey, why don't I teach her how to read Megillat Esther? And checking in terms of Jewish law concepts, I concluded, and I verified that with both my father-in-law, who was a very distinguished rabbi and very learned, and my father, who was also had smicha, and they both approved of what we ultimately did, which was have a Seudat Purim, a meal for Purim, which you're supposed to have on Purim in any event, and invite people and have Alyza read Megillat Esther at the Seudat Purim, not in the synagogue, but at some location other than the synagogue. I'm quite sure at that time there was no Orthodox synagogue that would have permitted a woman to read, even in the afternoon for women alone. There was no Orthodox synagogue that would have permitted it. So my feeling was, let's do it at a Purim festive meal. Let her read the Megillah, and let her read it because she was reading it out of a scroll. She could read it with the blessings, with the brachot. So that's what we did. I taught her. She learned it very, very well, and I was very proud of the fact that she did it. And we even had, as the invitation indicated, the equivalent of a bar mitzvah boy's learned pilpul, Torah thing. I made up sort of some funny Purim Torah, as they call it, which she also delivered after she had read the Megillah. You remember that?
I do. I do. But that's true. I was in 6th grade at the time, and the girls in my class, what they did, most of them, when they reached Bat Mitzvah, if they made a party and if they marked it, it usually was with some low-key party in their home, and then maybe the girl would speak. She would say something. She might talk about the portion that week, the parsha, but that was the extent of it. The only class member of mine who had anything more than that was a young woman who belonged to a conservative synagogue, and so she was able to learn to read the Torah for her egalitarian service. But in the Orthodox community, there was nothing of that nature for Benot Mitzvah. And the truth is, what we did was novel, and growing up, it had a very significant impact on me, because I used to always think about how for young men, we end up, for their bar mitzvah, giving them the keys to belonging to the Jewish community around the world. Once they learn how to chant from the Torah, or how to go up to the Torah and receive an aliyah, to be called up to the Torah, to get up and to speak, we've given them skills now that they can use and go into a synagogue anywhere around the world. But what do we do for young women that's even remotely similar in the Orthodox community? What key do we give them to their participation in the broader Jewish community? We don't give them anything. And so it had a real impact on me, and it made a real difference for me in terms of my celebration of Purim. And I did, after my bat mitzvah at the Kosher Kitchen, read Megillat Esther every single year from then until today. I read it first initially at home. When we moved to Potomac, we arranged with the rabbis, and we had a women's service for women in Potomac. When I went to college, I read it in college. I had gone before college, actually, for a year in Israel, to a seminary in Israel. I read it for the women in the seminary in Israel. Many of them it was so novel, we're recording it and sending it home, the beginnings of the Megillah. We have a woman who's reading Megillat Esther for us. And when I moved downtown to Washington, D.C., at Kosher Israel, I started a women's Megillah reading in Purim of 1994. And we have had that now every single year since at Kosher Israel.
Okay, well that's great. Now, and I guess my next question is, why hold it at the Kosher Kitchen of all places? Who wants to
Well,
take-
when I thought about how this thing could be set up and where it could be done, quite frankly, I did not want to have to make a major rabbinic issue about this, to go and talk to a synagogue and try to do it, even not in the synagogue itself, in some hall, and have whether the rabbi was going to approve it or not. My feeling was, and both my father and father-in-law approved it at the time, that this was clearly permissible under Jewish law. And the question was, then where were we going to hold it if we were going to do it around the Purim festive meal? And it was quite obvious to me, quite frankly, and to my wife, that there was only one place that we could appropriately do that, and that was the Kosher Kitchen. We loved the Kosher Kitchen. We felt that we could invite people to come, whether they were Jewish or non-Jewish. I mean, a good number of non-Jewish. I mean, I had law partners at the time. I was the only Jewish name in that law partnership. Miller, Cassidy, LaRocca. Those three were not Jewish, but they came to the Bat Mitzvah, and the fact that it was in a kosher restaurant, so we could have it, we could have a kosher meal, a kosher celebration, and do everything that one should do with regard to Purim and the Purim festive meal at the Kosher Kitchen. So it was almost natural, I mean, that we would pick the Kosher Kitchen, which we loved, to have this event.
And what kind of experience did you have there?
It was wonderful. I mean, it was warm and it was fun. The folks who were there dressed up. They put makeup on their faces. They decorated the place with streamers, and it was just a really good feeling, almost like inviting someone into your home. I mean, it was fun. My friends loved it. I loved it. My family loved it. It was special.
And we handed out Purim masks, we handed out little books of Esther, the Megillah, and all this sort of thing, so that made it a Purim festive meal together with the personnel of the Kosher Kitchen who joined in the festivities, really, as Alyza said. Painted up their faces and were appropriate for Purim.
And you mentioned David Schneer. Was he present? And tell me what his contribution.
So Dave Schneer was not only my guitar teacher, as I said, he taught me how to play the guitar, but he came and he was the musician for the event. So he played music during the event. He was there, and that was special too. As when I was in sixth grade, because I became a friend, a teacher, a mentor. But in sixth grade, our school actually put together the choir put together a record. It was the one and only time that the Hebrew Academy made an album. So in addition to Dave giving me the opportunity to sing at the Kosher Kitchen, he actually swapped albums with me one time. So he autographed his album to me, and I was able to autograph our school album and exchange it with him. So, but he performed at the Bat Mitzvah.
Did you ever go back to the Kosher Kitchen, Nat, after the Bat Mitzvah?
Oh, I'm sure we did. I don't recall, but I mean, the Kosher Kitchen was open after, as the local kosher facility after the Bat Mitzvah. So I'm sure that we were there many times afterwards because, again, it was the kosher facility in Washington.
I guess I'm wondering, this is a silly hypothetical question, but if there were another kosher restaurant that was much more fancy, like the ones like Lucille's or something like that, would you have gone there instead if you had a choice of kosher restaurants?
Well, I mean, looking back on it, definitely not, because it was such a warm event when it actually...
My question's not in there, so maybe you could...
Oh,
put
okay.
My question in context.
Right, you're asking whether if there had been a fancier kosher restaurant in Washington, would we have chosen such a restaurant like the very ritzy restaurants that there were in New York? And the answer to that is that certainly in retrospect, absolutely not. It ended up being a very warm event. Would I initially have thought that maybe to make it a high-class event, I should go to some fancier restaurant? Maybe so, but cost would have been a factor. I mean, I was not that wealthy that I was able to go and spend huge amounts of money on some event, and the Kosher Kitchen was right in terms of pocketbook and in terms of all the ambiance, really, in the Kosher Kitchen. So I think there was no serious question about going somewhere else.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to ask Ira. Ira, is there anything that I'm missing here?
The only thing, do you remember any interaction that you had with the people who worked there?
Do I remember any interaction I had with the people I worked there?
Tell us about the people that worked
I mean, I can't remember any particular thing that happened, but even looking at the photographs today, I mean, it brings back very warm and fuzzy feeling about the personnel there. They were all very friendly, very, I mean, both in the spirit of the Purim event, but also always, I mean, I guess our feeling was that these were folks who were not just kind of restaurant employees, but people whom we really liked, I mean, when we went there.
I don't remember anything specific, but I think now as a parent who has children in the age range that I was at the time that I went. So my general recollection is when I think now about young adults who interact with my children and make my kids feel good about themselves and good interacting with adults. That was definitely the sense that I have of the people who worked there. Like they would talk to me like I was a person, right? They would interact with me like I was a person, and they gave me opportunities as if I was an adult, and that meant a lot to me.
So, and if you compare that with New York, I mean, I compare with the New York kosher restaurants were well known for the fact that they had waiters who were sort of elderly gentlemen who would yell at you. I mean, you order, come on, quick, decide what you want to get, take the pot roast, take the chicken, do this.
The opposite, or in New York, you would ask what you wanted to order, and they'd say, you don't want that, you want this, right?
Else.
You want this.
Whereas the Kosher Kitchen had people who were more cordial, and you felt warmer towards them than you did. My recollection of the restaurants in New York when I was growing up was that I was cowed and intimidated by the waiters in the restaurants in New York. That's not the atmosphere in the Kosher Kitchen.
So, Nat, I'm going to ask you if you can just kind of sit up, just because you're leading this a little bit. On this.
Maybe a word about who they are today.
Who
they are today, what they do today, what they've done.
Sure.
Since the Kosher Kitchen, since the Bat Mitzvah.
So, why don't you tell me?
So we've come a long way since the Kosher Kitchen. Now, 14 years ago, we opened up a law practice together, a father-daughter law firm, Lewin and Lewin. We continued basically the practice that my father had started, which was a mix of white-collar criminal defense and civil litigation, but it has always, as he's always devoted his life to legal issues related to the Jewish community. That's what we have continued to do together. So together we've ended up bringing, for example, the leading case that was on behalf of victims of terror, that established the right of victims of terror to sue domestic organizations that are really fronts for Hamas and collect damages. We brought the lawsuit that went up to the Supreme Court that involved the right of an American citizen born in Jerusalem to have Israel listed as the place of birth on their
Now,
U.S.
that was
passport.
argued in the Supreme Court twice. The first time, since Alyza and I were practicing law together, I decided I would argue it. But the second time was argued in the Supreme Court. Alyza argued that case in the Supreme Court. And ordinarily, I mean, I've been in the Supreme Court many times. I've been second chair to somebody who's argued, including Thurgood Marshall when he was Solicitor General, very great Solicitors General, people who argued cases in the Supreme Court. When I would sit as second chair, I'd spend all the time writing notes to give them better answers than the answers that they were giving. When Alyza stood up to argue, I had nothing to write. Her answers were fantastic. They were better than any that I could think of. So, and I think it was the first time in the history of the Supreme Court that a father has sat second chair while his daughter was arguing a case in the Supreme Court. It may be the first time that a father has sat second chair while a child, male or female, was arguing the case in the Supreme Court. But it was a great experience.
I just want to ask, can we, we're still rolling, okay, this was my monitor cut out, that's fine. Sorry?
One more thing that to help see who they are, your activity in the Jewish community, the Jewish community world, for both of you.
Well, okay, from the time I guess that I went out into private practice after I clerked on the Supreme Court, I have been fortunate enough to have been asked and have been proud to represent various Jewish organizations and individuals who have raised religious rights on cases that ultimately many of them came up to the Supreme Court. The question of the right to wear a yarmulke in the military together with a uniform. I presented that case in the Supreme Court. The issue of the Lubavitch library, that the question was, did it belong to the Lubavitch Hasidic community or did it belong to the private ownership of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe? I presented that in federal court, in district court in Brooklyn, and in a court of appeals. The right of the Satmar community, Satmar Hasidic community, to have a school for handicapped children that was publicly funded. I presented that in the Supreme Court of the United States. The right of to have a Hanukkah menorah in front of City Hall on public property. I litigated that in the Supreme Court of the United States and have had probably 20 cases since then involving the right to put a menorah on public property. That question keeps coming up, and we litigate that. So, as I say, I've had the privilege of doing that in addition to being active in the Jewish community with various organizations. The Orthodox Union, I was president of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington back in '82. And now Alyza is president of the American Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists. So,
Just also following in his footsteps, because he was president of the American section of the International Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists before I was, many years earlier. So,
You know what would be nice would be if you would, each of you, say your names and just do like, say, hey, you know, my name is, you okay? Name's Nat Lewin. I'm a lawyer with the firm. And then you
okay.
could say, hey, my name.
okay.
And we're practicing law together, you know. And Bob, you are casting a shadow. I mean, you
Really?
have to, yeah.
Where,
you
I can't see it.
I can see
Where
it.
is it?
It's on Nat's forehead.
So we have to do the whole thing all over again.
I need to do this thing.
No, just, I mean,
I didn't, sorry, I really didn't see it.
I know. Okay, so,
Okay, my name is,
I was talking, so you.
all right. My name is Nathan Lewin, or people know me as Nat Lewin, and I was born in Poland before the war. My parents escaped from Poland when the war broke out, came to the United States. I've been very fortunate in this country and practiced law, and now I'm delighted to be practicing law with my daughter in Lewin & Lewin. Used to be at Miller, Cassidy, LaRocca & Lewin, which was a law firm that was a leading litigation boutique in the United States. And when people would say to me, Lewin, if you're such an important lawyer, why are you the last name in the law firm? And I would explain to them, I'd say, most of my clients read from right to left.
My name is Alyza Lewin, and I'm an attorney, and I am privileged to be practicing law together with my father for the past 14 years. We've been practicing together as Lewin & Lewin.
Great. Here's another question, and maybe the last one. The Kosher Kitchen closed its doors as a collective in 1978. And once they closed, I imagine, let the siren go by, I think. Or wait.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just gonna think about my question for a second. While the siren goes by. Let me know when we're clear. Bob can hear a gnat sneeze from 40 yards away.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's like Superman. He has super
It's
hearing.
the microphone. Yep. No, I
It's almost gone.
think it's gone.
Okay. So eventually the Kosher Kitchen closed. So Nat, was it easy for you to find another restaurant to replace the Kosher Kitchen?
I can't think back to '78, but it's always been a struggle in Washington to find kosher facilities, and the rabbis had imposed pretty strict requirements. So for a restaurant to have rabbinic certification was pretty rare. So I can't recall what we did exactly after '78, after the Kosher Kitchen closed, but it's always been a source of great celebration when there's some new kosher facility in Washington. But I don't know of any that was as community-oriented and as much a part of really the community rather than being a private business as the Kosher Kitchen was.
And okay, so what about you? How did you feel when the Kosher Kitchen closed?
I don't remember how I felt at that time, although I'm sure I was very sad to see it go. Any kind of change or any kind of giving up of those kinds of things, my parents will tell you, always had a big impact on me. So I'm sure it was very sad, to see it go. And it's, as my father noted, it's never been easy to have and keep and maintain kosher restaurants in Washington, but certainly something as warm and community-oriented as the Kosher Kitchen, there never was another restaurant like that.
Do you think there ever will be another restaurant like the Kosher Kitchen?
No.
Could you give that back to me in the form of a statement?
No, I don't think there will ever be another restaurant like the Kosher Kitchen.
Alyza, after we left and after it closed as a collective, it moved to Montgomery Hills, which I think was then the Hebrew Academy,
Oh
wasn't
my
it?
God.
And I think it did the food facility.
Is that
They-
what really?
They
Wow.
moved it from where they were in White
Right.
Oak. They moved to Montgomery Hills, and it lasted about a half a year there.
Really?
And then it closed down.
But
Were you
Montgomery
a
Hills-
student then?
Well, so Montgomery Hills, but this would be in 78.
We moved
So
out here in 79.
we moved here in 79 because so 8th grade, I'm trying to think, so the Hebrew Academy, I guess, was already there because by the time we moved here, you were
Okay.
here. Oh, I was definitely at the
So
school
the
there.
first year-
So the first
no, maybe
year-
it wasn't the first year that they had. I think it was
It
the
could
first
be
year.
the
Because
first
Kosher
year.
Kitchen
That could
was
be.
the
Was the
But
kosher?
you
I
didn't-
mean,
But then you didn't realize it even.
I'm
You
not
just-
sure
they
that I
just had a food service.
remember that, right? Because it would have been
But
the
then
food
somehow the
service.
restaurant was then after school. It was in the evening hours
Ah,
there
that they
as
would
well.
open
So
up
they did both.
there. They did the food service, and then they
food
had.
service in the day and then
Maybe now that you say that, maybe I kind of recall a little bit
yeah,
something like
there's
that,
no impression
but
there,
not.
yeah.
But that's really interesting.
I'm
It
sure
could have
they didn't
been.
wear costumes.
Yeah, no. What I remember the most at that point is once my parents moved out here, then I had to take the city bus from Montgomery Hills out here. It took 45 minutes to get out to Montgomery Mall, and there was one other student who took that bus ride with me. So that's what I really remember most from that whole move.
Okay. All
It was
right.
like that long bus ride.
Okay.
But yeah.
So, Nat, what about you? I asked your daughter if there would ever be another restaurant like the Kosher Kitchen. What do you think?
No, I don't think there has been, certainly since the Kosher Kitchen left, another restaurant like it. Do I ever think there will be? No, because I think unless you really have a group of people who are committed community-wide and committed to the community rather than simply doing it as a business, you wouldn't have anything that would match the style and the ambiance and the fervor of the Kosher Kitchen.
I have to say something that it just struck me as I was listening to my father, because I do think that one of the kind of signature items, even in terms of our practice, Lewin and Lewin, has always been that we have looked to serve the Jewish community. That's just who we are. That's what we're about. Whatever their legal needs are, we've tried to help them. And it seems to me very interesting and very fitting in retrospect that the place that I celebrated my Bat Mitzvah that became so meaningful to me was a place that embodied that same exact message. It's really true. That whole idea of being able to serve the community and give the community is something that meant so much to the people at the Kosher Kitchen and meant so much to us and continues to.
That's wonderful. All right, is there any question that I should have asked you that I forgot?
But it's
Really,
true.
really.
Wow.
It's
I've
really
written this
true.
script better.
Hey, listen, you're gonna make me start crying.
I am.
It's true.
So, anything that I should have asked you that I didn't think to ask you?
I don't know.
Anything else that you wanna?
Ricky, is there anything that
Mother, anything else that we should address?
I was thinking before, but I think you ended up covering it.
Okay, all right then. We're gonna record just the sound of the room for the editor, so we'll need to be quiet
Okay.
for about 10 or 15 seconds. This is Bob's big moment here.
It's room tone for the Lewins. And room tone.
Boy, that clock ticking
Now you
never
hear the
sounded
clock,
so
right?
loud. Right?